Getting back to our text here, verse 27, as Luke sets the stage for this next scene of his narrative, including the Annunciation to Mary and then Jesus' eventual conception and birth, he drives in a key pillar here of Christian doctrine, which is that the Son of God in his incarnation would be virgin born. Look at verse 27. The angel appeared to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. Did he catch that? Mary's virginity is mentioned twice here. It's almost as though Luke is saying, in case you missed it the first time, she was a virgin. Now, in the weeks ahead, we will go deeper into this account, of course, and we will work out more of the details of all that was involved with these different aspects of the virgin birth of Christ. But for this morning's purposes, as we sort of round out our walk through this stage-setting text, I just want to walk us through some of the basics of what the virgin birth is and what it was all about. I'm going to give you 4 key truths about the virgin birth of Christ, and then we'll be done. Number 1, the virgin birth was supernatural. This one is rather obvious. Virgins don't get pregnant. But here, one did. And when a virgin gets pregnant, you know something supernatural must be going on. And note that there are various key indicators here of the supernatural elements associated with the virgin birth. We've already seen it was preceded by the announcement of an angel. That doesn't happen every day. Who was sent by God himself. And as we're soon going to see, the Holy Spirit was the divine agent in bringing about the conception of Jesus in Mary's womb. So the virgin birth was supernatural. But at the same time, the conception of Jesus in Mary's womb was not only supernatural or merely supernatural. And what I mean by that is there are many other religions of the world that claim supernatural births for their own objects of worship. Buddha was said to have been supernaturally conceived according to a dream his mother had. His mother wrote this, the mother of Buddha: a noble elephant, white as silver or snow, having 6 tusks, well-proportioned trunk and feet, blood-red veins, firmness of joints, and easy pace, has entered my belly. That's how the birth of the Buddha is recorded, or the conception of the Buddha. And then 10 months later, he was born. In Greco-Roman mythology, the mother of Perseus was said to have been conceived by Jupiter when Jupiter visited her in the form of a golden shower of rain. Then there's the story of the Assyrian king Sennacherib, who supposedly the goddess of procreation superintended his conception in the womb of his mother. See, the point is, each of those stories, if they were taken with any sense of face value, would be described as supernatural births. So were the stories of various births recorded in the Old Testament: Isaac, Samson, Samuel. These are instances of supernatural involvement in a birth. None of those, though, involved a virgin birth. A virgin birth is, by definition, a supernatural birth, but a supernatural birth is not, by definition, a virgin birth. Jesus' birth was unique. He was virgin born. Here's our next one. The virgin birth was incarnational. The virgin birth was incarnational. What does that mean? It means that through his incarnation, Jesus, the Son of God, took on humanity. He existed eternally as God. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And as God, he existed eternally in spirit form, but through his incarnation, he took on flesh. The eternal Son of God stooped down from his eternal position in the heavenlies to be encased in flesh, with real skin and real hair and real fingernails and real follicles, just like you and I have. That's what we mean by his incarnation. Jesus was and is God incarnate. John 1:14, the Word, that's Jesus, became flesh. That's an incarnational passage. And how did he become flesh? Through his virgin birth, specifically by his conception by the Holy Spirit in the virgin womb of Mary. But why? Why the incarnation? Why the virgin birth? Why the necessity of either? That brings us to our third truth, which is that the virgin birth was necessary. The virgin birth was necessary. If Jesus had a natural human father, he would be just a man. And if that were the case, though he'd be able surely to sympathize with us in his humanity, he would still have a sin nature, and hence not be sinless, and hence not be that perfect, spotless substitute that was needed to pay for the sins of mankind. But that's not what happened. Instead, look how Luke records it down the page in Luke 1:34. Luke 1:34 says, "But Mary said to the angel, 'How will this be, since I am a virgin?' The angel answered and said to her, 'The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you, and for that reason the holy child shall be called the Son of God.'" And the Holy Spirit, in other words, would bring about the conception of Jesus in Mary's womb in a unique way, coming upon Mary and overshadowing Mary, so that the child conceived in her womb would be called, you see it there in verse 35, holy, perfect, set apart, righteous, allowing him to be this sinless substitute, this perfect representative, this spotless lamb. Last one, number 4, the virgin birth was prophetically predicted. The virgin birth was prophetically predicted. Over 700 years before the angel's encounter with Mary, the prophet Isaiah wrote these words in Isaiah 7:14. "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel." Now, the Hebrew word there for virgin is Alma, and there have been literally centuries of debates over two main issues related to Isaiah 7:14. One is whether that word Alma means virgin or instead young woman or maiden. And two is whether Isaiah's prophecy was intended to have only a near-term fulfillment, i.e. in Isaiah's day, or if it was to have a longer-term fulfillment for the future. I'm going to largely stay out of those debates this morning, number one, because we have like 2 minutes left, and number two, because we're going to cover this in the weeks ahead in much more detail. But for our purposes today, I just want us to note this. As Luke is setting the stage for us in these 2 verses, it is sufficient for us to note as we get ready to depart that Matthew, in Matthew 1:23, quoted Isaiah 7:14. And he answered those 2 questions I just posed to you quite straightforwardly when he directly applied the prophecy of Isaiah to Jesus, and in doing so used a Greek word, parthenos, that means virgin. Not maiden, not young girl, virgin. And Luke, in our context, in our text, uses that same Greek word, parthenos, to describe Mary. Verse 27, she was a virgin, parthenos, betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David, and the virgin's name, parthenos, was Mary. In fact, Mary herself, in Luke 1:34, used that same word to describe herself. Mary says this in Luke 1:34, "How will this be, since I am a parthenos, virgin?" Tying all of this together, the Messiah would be conceived in the womb of a virgin Mary.